Hi, my name is Ishmael and today we're going to be talking about a Chinese proverb and what it means. And be careful because all Chinese proverbs and most proverbs have two meanings. One is the obvious one and two is the very inobvious one. The very inobvious one is the one that people don't realise and don't take into consideration. And it's the one that you realise once you get deeper into the proverb and once you practice it. So, this Chinese proverb is known as the farmer and the sun. Now, the farmer, the Chinese farmer, this story goes in multiple ways. It depends who you listen to tell it, because it's a Chinese proverb, so it changes over time, and it changes by depending on who heard it from who, and what part of the country it came from. So, without too much history, the Chinese proverb goes something like this. There once was a farmer in China. This farmer had a son and he had one horse. And what happened was that the farmer's son accidentally left the gate not quite locked closed. It was closed but it wasn't locked shut. And the horse managed to escape. Now, the horse escaped and ran out into the wild. And what happened is all the village people came and it came to the farmer and said, "Oh dear, what a horrible thing has happened to you." And the farmer goes, maybe so, maybe not. And the villagers thought, what a crazy farmer. I mean, you've just lost your horse and you're saying it might be a terrible thing? That horse was your livelihood. It allowed you to plough your fields. Without the horse, how are you going to plough all your fields? How are you going to produce the food for the village? This must be a terrible thing. And so they thought. The following day, the horse returned with 6 more stallions. It returned with 6 more horses. And the village people all heard about the horse returning with 6 more horses and coming back into the fields. And they all came back to the farmer and they say, "Oh dear, great farmer, what a great thing has happened. You've now got 6 more horses to help you plough the fields. What an amazing thing has happened to you." And the farmer responds, "Maybe so, maybe not. Who knows?" And the people thought, "You crazy farmer. What do you mean, maybe? You've just got 7 horses when you had 1. Now you can plough your fields twice as quick, 3 times as quick, and you're going to be able to produce way more crops and you'll be able to feed the village with less effort. This must be amazing." But the farmer was not so convinced. And so, the following day, the farmer's son decided, okay, it's time to start taming these horses so we can actually use them to plough our fields. And so the farmer's son went out with his rope, rode the horse, the tame horse, and went and caught the other horse. And as he caught the other horse, he managed to calm it down a little bit and got on its back, ready to tame it. And he was thrown off the horse. And what happened? When he hit the ground, he broke his leg. And all the village people heard about this and they came back to the farmer and said, "Oh dear farmer, what a terrible thing has happened. Your son has broken his leg." And the farmer goes, "Maybe so, maybe not. Who knows?" And the people thought, "Oh, you crazy person. You have this poor child of yours who has broken his leg and you're thinking it might be a terrible thing? He's broken his leg." And they went off again. And the following day came, and what happened is the military came into town to start recruiting people for the war that was going on in the area, or in China. And so they came in and they were recruiting, went to every single house in the village, and they recruited every able person that could go to war. Every son was taken. And when they got to the farmer's house, they saw that the farmer's son had a broken leg. And the farmer couldn't be taken because he was providing food for the village. And he was very old. And so, when they came to the farmer's son, they said, "Well, he's got a broken leg. He's no good in a battle." So they left him. And the villagers heard about this. And they came back to the farmer and said, "Oh dear farmer, what a great thing has happened. Your boy has not been taken to war. This must be amazing." And the farmer said, "Maybe so, maybe not. Who knows?" Now, the story goes on and on and on, effectively, forever, because it's, as you can see, a recurring thing. The farmer has positive things happen to him, and he says, it might be good, it might not be. the farmer has negative things happen to him, and he says it might be good, it might not be. The moral of the story on level number 1, and how it is presented to most people, and most people's understanding of this story, is that you should take every circumstance, whether it's good or bad, as a neutral. This means that if something bad happens to you, you should not go, oh no, my life's over, something bad happened to me, I was in a car accident, I lost my job, this, that or the other, I broke my leg, I hurt my arm. You should take these circumstances and you should say, okay, it's okay. But the problem of this story is that he says exactly the same thing on the other side, which is level number 2. Level number 1, understanding effectively how it is broken down, means that if anything negative happens to you, you should not take it as something massive, and you should take it with a pinch of salt, because for all you know, it is a positive thing, but you will not know that until the following day. So you should wait and see what happens. And in some circumstances, negative things don't always happen positively the following day. They might be the same day, they might be weeks later, but you may never even see them, because that car accident you were in which might have just been a bump. So you might have been in a car accident and you just had a bump, and it damaged your bumpers and it caused you delays and it made you get late for work. Might be a bad thing, but you will never know what would have happened on the road if you weren't in that accident. Maybe if you weren't in that bump of a car accident, which was a little bit of damage, maybe even a write-off, you would have been in the accident further down the road. And the accident further down the road would have been a collision of catastrophic scale where multiple people may have been killed. You don't know that. So you should always look at things from a positive point of view, or say, it's okay. But the problem with the farmer's story is when you go to level number 2. Level number 2 says, yes, you should look at the positive on a positive, and you should look at the negative from a positive, or rather on the story, a neutral. But the problem is that when you start looking at every story from a neutral point of view, what ends up happening? You end up not having high and lows. You end up having a mutual thing. You end up being content with life. Now, contentment is a good thing in one way, but it's a bad thing in another way. The reason being that if you are content, it means that you take every positive and every negative as a neutral. But then if you take every positive and you take every negative as a neutral, what's going to happen? You're going to be content, which means you'll be generally happy. You won't be unhappy, you won't be happy. You'll be neutral. And you might be generally more enthusiastic and more positive outlook on life. But you won't have any major highs, because the positives will always be followed by a maybe, something is going to happen which I've got to be ready for. And so you'll be content, which is great. But would you rather be content, or would you rather be extremely happy and extremely sad? Contentment is somewhere in the middle. Because if you're extremely happy, you cannot be content because you're happy. And contentment is a neutral emotion. And if you're extremely sad, you cannot be content because contentment is in the middle. So, the balance of the universe generally says yin and yang, positive and negative, as people say, light and dark. And you have two extremes on the scale. Now, if you want to be two extremes on the scale, you can. But if you go up, you can't stay up forever. You can stay up for a long period, but eventually you'll have to come down. And when you come down, you'll have negative emotions. And eventually you can't stay there forever, you'll have to go up. Now from my point of view, I have been in multiple situations where I have experienced extreme happiness for extreme long periods of time. When I say extreme long periods of time, I mean sort of 6 months of happiness bliss, where there is absolutely no negativity, there is no bad scenarios that I saw, because all the bad scenarios that happened, whether it be various things, from vehicle issues, to not having money, to anything else, it doesn't really matter, but I had some bad, I had some good. But the fact is that I was on a positive high. That was a great period. Now I've also had it where I'm content, where I'm not on a high, and I'm not feeling extremely happy, and I'm not on a low, and I'm not feeling extremely sad, but I'm somewhere in the middle, where I'm just content, you know, just like, life is great. But nothing amazingly good happens and nothing amazingly bad happens, which means life is great. This is a great feeling to go through life, with looking at the negative from a neutral point of view. which can go on forever as far as I'm understanding. I haven't found a point where it isn't, and I don't see any reason why it won't. But then we won't get the positive high. Now if we go back to the positive high, that's great, but if you get to a positive high, what's going to happen? Eventually you have to come down. Now the trick in life is to balance. It's to balance the positive high with a contentment. Now this is something which is extremely hard to manage. When you be able to get a positive high, that's amazing. When you come back down to contentment, then that's amazing. And the trick is not to go below contentment. If you start feeling down, then go to contentment. Go to a, you know what, life is great, I should look at life from a neutral point of view. Nothing good, nothing bad, as the farmer did. And then, once you've managed to stabilise your emotions and your surroundings and things seem to not be so not a positive or negative, which is very difficult to judge when you're in contentment. It's very difficult to put judgment on scenarios. But after a while you'll start feeling so content that you're like, now what's next? And that's when you can go back and start pushing yourself back to the positive high. If you can manage to master this state, you will be in a permanent state of bliss. And this is what we are aiming for in life. So if you like this channel, subscribe, whack that bell notification icon to get notified of videos coming out each and every week.